Okay, this problem is actually going to incorporate some of what we learned in the previous section with the composition, because if you notice here you have that composition notation. Of course, you've got just your given function f that's going to be used, but you also need your inverse. So before I start doing the composition, what I've got to do is actually find the inverse. Okay, so let's find the inverse. So using the function at the top, you're going to switch your x and your y. So I would have x is equal to 10y minus 10. Okay, so then my next step is going to be to add the 10. So x plus 10 is equal to 10y. And now divide by 10. So y is equal to x plus 10 divided by 10. So this is my inverse. Okay? All right, so let me just kind of box this off here. So we're going to be using this function, and then of course the function here that we just found. Okay? So starting off, we're asked to find the inverse of f of 10. Okay, so when we talked about this before, when you were given a specific value, what you can do is start off by substituting the 10 into the one that's directly in front of it. So I'm going to put the 10 into f. So right here I'm just going to do f of 10. Now f is the original function, okay? So that's going to be 10 times 10 minus 10. So that's 100 minus 10, which is 90. And now what you're to do is actually take this result and you plug that result or substitute that result then into the one that's listed first. So the 90 has to be plugged into the inverse. So now you're calculating f inverse of 90. So I have to substitute the 90 over here where I found my inverse. So I have 90 plus 10 divided by 10. Of course, that gives me 100, and 100 divided by 10 is 10. So when I did my steps and calculated this, I have ended up with an answer of 10. That's where this right here came from, okay? So I had to take the 10, plug it into the original function first. That's where the 90 came from, but then I have to take the 90 and plug the 90 into the inverse. Same process that we went through in the previous section, okay? So if you notice, you started by plugging in a 10 and you ended up with a 10, okay? Just make note of that. All right, now let's do it the other way. So now I'm going to do the f of f inverse of 10. Okay, so f of f inverse of 10. Okay, so I've got to start off by plugging the 10 into the inverse. Okay, so the 10 is substituted into the inverse. Of course, this is the inverse that I found right here. So I'm going to have 10 plus 10 divided by 10. Well, 10 plus 10 is 20. 20 divided by 10 is 2. All right, so now you take that result, and that result is now plugged into the original function, the first one that's listed here. So now f of 2. Use your result from here. So the original, of course, was 10x minus 10, so I would have 10 times 2 minus 10. So that's 20 minus 10, which is 10. Okay, so just like I had pointed out to you a while ago, you know, I said, think about the fact that we started with a 10, we ended with a 10. We started with a 10, we ended with a 10. That's what's going to happen whenever you have a function and its inverse, and you're using those two things to do the composition. That's what you can expect to happen.